And then why don't we go ahead and get started? Can you see my screen okay?
Perfectly.
Okay, perfect. So today's session is Canvas Studio and video quizzing. The objectives of this session is we are going to talk about why incorporating media into your course can be beneficial to your students, as well as various ways you can incorporate videos into your course, the benefits of utilizing video quizzes as a form of assessment, and then of course establishing best practices for incorporating video as a form of assessment, and then lastly, design and develop a customized video quiz within Canvas Studio. So I wanted to take this time to ask everybody, have you tried instructional videos or video quizzing in your course before? And if not, what has stopped you? So I'm gonna quickly stop sharing my screen, and Kathleen, it's just you. So
Well, in fact, I haven't, but the faculty that I do support have incorporated videos, and I'm not sure how they did it, but so anyway, let's continue.
yeah, okay, perfect. Um, so a lot of instructors that I have worked with have not incorporated video because they don't necessarily think behind the benefits of why they can incorporate and why they should incorporate video into their class, as well as different ways that you can incorporate video. So I'm going to take a moment to talk about Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning. Now, this is a theory that talks about that videos has been proven that people or students can learn more deeply than just words and pictures alone. And the rationale behind that is that students have a limited capacity when it comes to learning because of the different channels that we have. We have our auditory channels and we have our visual channels. And that if you have an instructor that's giving information through images, text, words, things like that, it's hard and difficult for students to be able to comprehend all that material coming from different audio channels. And so by turning information into a video, the brain then sees it as one channel of information because the video and the audio are on top of one another, and therefore it's easier for them to comprehend and be able for them to absorb that information. It also has the ability to assist with mastery. If you are reviewing complex materials, students have the ability to stop and pause to really soak in the information in which you're trying to tell them. They can rewind it if they need to kind of make sure they understood that concept or took the notes appropriately. Let's say that 2 weeks had passed and the finals coming up and they can't remember exactly what was covered in that video. They have the ability to re-watch that, which they wouldn't have if it was just a live lecture. So it gives that ability for them to be able to master the subject. It also has the ability to give students a close-up look into training videos. And I say this because one time I worked on an instructional video with a faculty, and it was an auditory class where they talked about inserting hearing aids. And it was a class that was 300 people, and it was a huge lecture hall. And when you have a huge lecture hall and somebody's trying to show you how to insert a hearing aid, the people in the back of that lecture hall aren't going to be able to see the details of how to actually insert it. So we decided we were going to do close-up video trainings so that way students can actually see where the hearing aid would go and get placed in their ear, and they could see some of those nice details that they wouldn't be able to get if they were in that large lecture hall. So it's a great way to incorporate those close-up looks. And then lastly, Gagne's 9 events of instruction, the very first event is talking about gaining attention. And a great way to gain attention is to show a video to help spark interest of that particular concept. And then that way they are interested in that concept and they're ready to learn and they can engage in those activities. So it's a great way to gain attention. And it ensures that they're ready and paying attention to whatever is going to get thrown their way. So those are just some quick reasons and rationales behind why video is important to incorporate in your course.
That's very interesting. And actually, something that I'll go back and look at is Mayer's cognitive theory. I've never heard of that, so I will look at that. And Gagne's 9 events of instruction. I had not heard of that either. So
Correct.
those are both useful inputs or recommendations.
Yeah, definitely. And I have hyperlinked in the PowerPoint that I'm going to send you after. So that way it just gives you a quick link for you to be able to find out more about those if you haven't heard of them.
Excellent. Yes.
So, what are ways that we can incorporate media? A lot of the times, instructors only think of just, introduction videos, which are a great way to use videos, especially online courses and asynchronous online courses where instructors might not get to engage with their students face to face. It's a great way to incorporate video to say, welcome to my class. Here is what we're going to talk about. Here's some information about me, and it helps build that connection that you might not get if you weren't face to face. You can also do topical introductions, meaning, hey, this is going to be the subject that I'm going to be teaching this week, and let's give you the top 3 things that you need to take away from this unit that I'm going to be teaching. A lot of students respond greatly to that. I have an instructor that introduced her top 3 videos as a topical introduction, and it lets students know, okay, here are the 3 main things that I need to focus on, and these are the most important. So when I'm reading that or I'm listening to some of this instructional videos, it gives me time to really be like, okay, do I understand this concept? And do I need to ask questions? Because this is really important for my learning. One that I skipped over, virtual lectures. Essentially what we're doing right now, it's a way to deliver material to students, especially in asynchronous online courses. You might not have the ability to sit down and talk with your students synchronously. So this is just a way to present materials to your students. In some synchronous classes, I always like to use the flipped classroom model where you utilize that synchronous class time as a way to discuss and talk about the readings and the videos that you learned instead of using that synchronous class time that's so precious on lecturing and introducing new materials. You can always record it prior to class, have your students watch it, and then come to class ready to talk and engage in that material. You also have screen captures, and what I mean by screen captures is for this particular video, I could have just said, here is what Canvas Studio is, and I'm going to show you the exact steps in which you need to do and how to form that specific task. So that is a screen capture video, which can be very effective to showing somebody how to complete a specific task, especially utilizing technology. Interviews with guest speakers. This is something that a lot of faculty struggle with, is getting guest speakers to come to their class every single semester because scheduling can become an issue. And so what I recommend, if you know you have a guest speaker that is brilliant and you want them to really talk about the concepts in class, record the one of time that they're into class, and then you can use it from semester to semester to semester. You interview with them, and so that way you don't lose that material in case that certain guest speaker can't make it next class. And then virtual field trips. This is something um, that I think could be really cool. And I haven't necessarily had a lot of faculty dive into virtual field trips, but when I was at a prior institution, I was working with somebody who was teaching Spanish, and she was talking about Spain and all the culture that you have there. And obviously, you can't necessarily take your entire class to Spain to be able to see a lot of the artwork and buildings there. So she decided to just find some 360 videos in virtual field trips so they could really see what she was talking about. And it's a little different than having just a picture to showcase, being able to really see the dimension and being able to utilize and move the camera around can really help grasp and be able to present that material to students for them to be able to soak it in and be able to remember. So I always like to throw in virtual field trips because that was one that was utilized and a lot of students really took a liking to, but I know every subject might not have the opportunity to do virtual field trips. So best practices, oh, go ahead, Kathleen. I see that you're
Oh,
unmuted.
no, I was just going to say that those are excellent reasons to use video.
Perfect. So quickly before we jump into how to make an instructional video, I wanted to talk about best practices. So these are things that we can think about as we are going to dive in and make those instructional videos. One thing that I always like to recommend, even though people love their memes or their animated GIFs of cats hitting something or a grumpy cat, I always say move unnecessary material from your PowerPoint slides or your videos. Now, that does not mean that at the very beginning, your title slide can't have a cute little grumpy cat saying happy Wednesday or whatever. But when we are actually presenting content and materials, um, for instance, this particular slide, I don't have any unrelated graphics or pictures. Mostly because when you have content that's being delivered and then you have a distracting picture or a graphic that doesn't necessarily relate to the content, it's going to pull away from that instructional content and materials and also provide confusion. So if you are somebody that likes to use animated GIFs and pictures, put them either at the beginning or at your question slide, not when content is being delivered. As always, limit text that's going to be on your screen. We don't want to necessarily have everything that I'm ever going to say packing on that screen. You want to do just the key content and then expand on what that subject is going to be. So that way you don't have students frantically trying to read all the content on your slide and then missing the material that you were trying to talk about. So really try to limit that content on the screen. And then it's not going to be as intimidating to a viewer. I like to do a bulleted list or a numbered list. So that way you can say, here are the key contents, and then I'm going to expand and elaborate on these concepts. I also abide by a show, don't tell rule. And what I mean by that, I'm going to go back to my reference of the hearing aid insertion video that we did. Instead of having somebody just sitting there talking and saying, here is how you're going to insert a hearing aid. You're going to take it, you're going to turn it on, you're going to then put it over a certain part of the ear. Instead, have a video actually demonstrating what it looks like instead of just showing them. Instead of just telling them, show them exactly where it's going to be inserted. That's something that a lot of instructors can sometimes struggle with, but I always say that if you can find a quick YouTube video that already exists, if you don't have the technology of somebody inserting a certain hearing aid on somebody, then you can always utilize that as an instructional video instead of you just talking about that process. So very important to try to show and not tell. Language, I always like to be informal and conversational in instructional videos for students. And there have been studies that have come out that students like when an instructor doesn't sound robotic in their instructional videos. A lot of times when I work with faculty, if they say, or they might have flubbed a word by mistake, they're like, you know what, let's cut it. I want it to be perfect. Let's go from there. And what I say to that is if you are in a face-to-face course delivering that content, you wouldn't say, you know what, I messed up. Everybody erase your memory. We're going to start it from the top. So students, especially in online courses where they don't get to see and engage with you as much, they want to know your personality. They don't want to listen to necessarily a robot that's just regurgitating information. So be conversational with them. You don't have to be completely formal. Now, there are times when you are going to want to have a more formal, professional looking video, and that's completely fine. But just know that you don't have to do that if it's just an instructional video for your class. Feel free to be informal and conversational with your students. That's what they want. That's how they build those relationships with you. Accessibility purposes, it is recommended to close caption your videos, but I also say it's not just for accessibility purposes. So many people can benefit from closed captioning videos. English as a second language learners, closed captioning can benefit them. And then I always say to close caption for me specifically, when I was getting my master's degree, I had my daughter, and when she was sleeping or when she was nursing, I would be watching instructional videos that my instructors would make, and I would put it on closed caption so that way I didn't wake up my sleeping child. And so that way I still was able to see and watch those videos without having to have the audio necessarily turned on. So there's so many people that can benefit from closed captioning. So it's something I always recommend to do. And I will say, and we'll show you in Studio, that Studio makes it so easy because it automatically closed captions your videos with up to 85% accuracy, and then it gives you the ability to edit those captions if you need to. So it makes it very easy for you to close caption. So I always recommend to close caption those videos. And then lastly, I want you to be cognizant about the length of your video. Research shows that 5 to 7 minutes is going to be the best for instructional videos because after 7 minutes, that's where students start to kind of drop off and lose interest in the video and you lose their attention spans. And so that doesn't mean that every video, you can only have a 7-minute video in your class. It just means that maybe we think about how to chunk that information that you're presenting. Instead of having one 30-minute video, maybe we have 3 10-minute videos or a couple 5 minutes, 7 minutes here. Now, I do always say 5 to 7 is best, but if you go to 8 minutes, it's not like the world is going to end. If you have to have 8 minutes, I always say to strive between 5 and 7, but if you have to go over because you can't meet your objectives for that video, that is fine. We just ask that you be conscious of how long that video is, because knowing that students' attention spans are going to be dropping off. Okay, this is what I'm going to call creation time. I am going to walk you through how to actually create a instructional video using Canvas. Now, I will say for those that are watching, depending on the college that you are in, I believe the law school does not have Canvas Studio implemented, but the School of Education does. So if you do not have Studio, you might not be able to follow along with these specific instructions, but I still wanted to show you how to do that process. So when you first log into Canvas, you're going to see on the far left-hand side here that we have a Studio button here. And when you click on that button, you're going to have your entire library load. Now, I will say that if you are new to Canvas Studio, you will not probably have anything in your Studio library. And that is okay. I have worked with Studio a lot, which is why you see all of my videos here. Now I'm going to stop here to see if anybody needed time to open up their Canvas to be able to navigate to Studio, just so that way we can see if anybody needs any couple more minutes to navigate. Kathleen, will you be following along, or are you just going to be watching? Either way is fine. Okay, you are muted, but I think I read your lips saying that you were just going to watch. Is that correct?
Very good lip reading. Yeah, I'll just watch.
Okay,
And I
perfect.
take notes, but I see where, so I go to Canvas, I click on Studio.
Yep, perfect. And I am going to be sending you this recording. So again, it's going to assist with mastery. If you don't remember all the steps, you can just come back to this video and watch all the steps. So once you're in Studio, you're going to see a couple buttons up here. We're going to have record, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but record is essentially how you record videos of yourself. But one thing that is great about Studio is we have this add button here. And what this does, if you are used to video production and you like to use iMovie, Premiere Pro, Final Cut, anything like that, you can drag an MP4 that's already been created and load it into Canvas Studio. So you can add a video quiz on top of that. You can still close caption it. It's just you aren't creating it from Canvas. You can also see that you have the ability to pull a YouTube video in from into Studio, and I never know what's going to pop up on my YouTube when I search it, so just bear with me. You can tell that I have young children, so I am going to say this Moana. So let's say this is the video that I wanted to grab. So I'm just going to simply copy that URL and then paste it where it says YouTube and hit that add button. And now I have that YouTube video that has been added to my Studio account for me to be able to add a video quiz, which we'll talk about later. I will want to emphasize that if you were not the owner of the YouTube video, you will not have the ability to close caption that video automatically through Canvas Studio. If you pull something in from YouTube, you have to generate those captions from YouTube. So it is something to keep in mind when you are creating and using these instructional videos. I'm now going to jump back to this record button. And you can see when I click this record button, I have two options. I can create a screen capture, which is exactly what it sounds like. I'm going to record my entire screen. Or I can do a web capture, which is just going to be just my face, nothing on my screen. It's just going to be a quick introduction video just of me talking. So I'm going to go ahead and show you screen capture here. And if it is going to be the first time that you are launching Screen Record Launcher, it might ask you to download the Screen Recorder Launcher to your computer. That's completely fine. But if you have already downloaded, it's going to ask if you want to open it. So I'm going to go ahead and open my screen recorder launcher. Let me go ahead and do that right now. I think I waited too long. And then let me move this information over here. So when you launch Screen Recorder Launcher, you're going to get this little gray box that's going to appear. And it's going to say, do you want to record your screen? Do you want to record your webcam, which again is just a video of you? Or do you want to record both, which is going to be your screen plus your webcam? So that way it's going to put a little picture of you at the bottom or at the top, so that way students can still see you as you are walking or talking through your material. Now, I will say, I don't know why it disappeared, but let me try to get my screen recorder launcher back so that way I can continue on with my presentation. So stand by, I'm not sure where it went. Here it is. The joys of working with two monitors. So you can see here that I have my little webcam down here, and this is what it would essentially look like if I was recording my screen capture. To have a little picture of me down here. Now I'm just going to record my screen for this purpose. And then this size. This is very important. When you click on size, it's going to show you a couple recording sizes. I recommend to always film in full screen, and that is you're going to record everything on your screen. I had an instructor that recorded his lecture, and he complained that it only recorded this small little box here. So as he was recording, he had to constantly move his slides back and forth to fit within this tiny little box. And that's because he didn't set his size correctly. So whatever you see within this candy stripe box is the only portion of your screen that's going to be recorded. So instead of having to maneuver through while you're lecturing back and forth within this tiny box, if you set it to full screen, it's going to full screen everything. So whatever you see on your screen, students will see on their screen as well. You can also see that under size, I have narration. And you can see that these little green lines are going back and forth. That means that my audio is picking up correctly. If you don't see any of these green lines moving back and forth, that means you might have the wrong audio input selected. So if you click on that button or this little narration option, it's going to pop out all of your different microphone options. If you don't have an external mic, most likely you're going to want to use your built-in microphone for your computer. If you have an external mic, like a Yeti or a Snowball or even a headset, then you're going to want to choose that particular your microphone device from this list. And then just make sure that you check it and that you're getting all of those lines moving back and forth. And a way that you can double check is if you click on audio headset. For my example, you can see that I can adjust my volume if I wanted to make it sound louder, and then I can test my playback to make sure it sounds okay and there's no buzzing or it's not super quiet or anything like that. And then once we have all of our settings figured out, I'm just going to hit this record button. And I'm going to get a nice countdown. And now it says, okay, I am recording. Whatever I say is going to be within this video. And you can even see at the bottom of my screen that I have a little countdown right here. So that way you can keep an eye on your time. And that way you know how to keep it within those 5 to 7 minutes. And then when I am done recording, I'm going to hit this little pause button right here. And then it's going to say, do you want to trash everything that I just did? Or are you done? Are you happy with what you've done? So I'm going to say that I'm done and that I'm really happy with everything that I've recorded. I want to let you guys know that you have the ability to do tiny edits within your video, meaning that you can trim off the beginning or the end of your clip. So a lot of the times instructors, when it says go, they don't necessarily start talking right away. So they want to trim off the beginning. If you just click on this little icon at the very bottom of your timeline on the far left, if I click and drag, you can see that now this little area is getting moved, which means that I'm trimming it, and this is where my start is going to be. Now you can also do that at the very end by, again, just clicking and dragging to cut that part off. and then you can play by clicking this little play button here to double check that you edited and you cut off the beginning and the end parts that you wanted, and then you didn't cut it too soon or you didn't cut it too late. So once your video is ready for you, oh,
Excuse me,
go
Ashley,
ahead.
can you edit in the middle of it?
So editing, not so much in the middle.
Okay.
Studio is more of a beginning and end situation. I will say that if you recorded a studio video and everything was perfect except a phone rang in the middle and you just wanted to cut it out, if you post it to Studio, it will give you the ability to download it as an MP4. And then if you have a Mac, there is iMovie, which is a free, pretty easy to pick up video editing software. And then a PC, I don't know if it's still Windows Media Maker or I can't remember what it's called, but there's an equivalent on a PC that is basic editing as well. That's usually free. And so that way you can always just edit that out really quickly. If it's something that you wanted to do, just let me know and then we can always set up an appointment if you needed to and I can show you. I do that a lot with faculty. Just quickly saying, okay, here's iMovie or share my screen and I will try to find how to help you on a PC. I'm a little slower if it's a PC, but on a Mac, I can do it pretty quickly. So once you are completely ready to upload it to Canvas, you are just going to make it a title. I'm just going to call this test video. If you wanted to give it a quick description, you are more than welcome to. And then you're going to hit this upload button. And you're going to see that it's going to upload directly to your studio. I recommend to wait until it's 100% uploaded before closing your screen. If you close and exit screen recorder launcher before it is done uploading, you're going to lose that video. So make sure you see that upload successful and then hit continue. And now you can see it's starting to automatically populate within my studio account. And that is the first part of how to record a video. Now, this is where a lot of instructors get confused. If it's in your studio account, it's there, but you have not linked it to a course yet for students to be able to see it. So it's important that once your video is there, we then put it into our Canvas course site. And there's going to be two ways that you can do this. The first way is to hover over your video with these three vertical dots and then hit share media. And then you can create a public link here where it's going to generate a hyperlink or a URL that you can then copy and then go to a module and hit this little plus button here. And then from this drop down, you're going to say I want an external URL. And then I can paste that URL right in that option and say, this is my test video here and add that item. And then now from the student side, all I have to do is click and it's going to launch that video for me. I do want to say that it does create a public link. If it is behind Canvas, it's going to be behind NetBadge, but if a student were to copy that URL and share it with somebody external to UVA, because it is a public link, somebody outside of UVA would technically be able to see that video. So just be conscious of, if you don't want it to be a public link, then we're going to leave it within Canvas and behind NetBadge. And the way that you're going to do that is you are going to hit that plus button, just like we did for the external link. But instead of external link, you're going to say external tool. And that's going to load a lot of these great external tools. And you're going to see Studio is an option right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click Studio. And then I'm going to say, this is the video I want to add. You can say, do you want to allow comments on a video? This allows students to have a conversation or a discussion on the video directly, or you as the instructor can say, okay, 15 minutes in, pay close attention to this particular part. This is going to be on maybe a final exam, or we're going to talk about this in class. So if you are used to, or if you've ever seen pop-up video, I think VH1 did it, where you're watching a video and like a little bubble pops up with more information, that's what it's going to look like. And then you can also follow along on the conversation thread that's going to be happening below the video. You also have the ability to allow students to download your video. I know instructors sometimes get iffy about allowing students to download their videos, but especially right now, because we are in a pandemic, I always recommend to allow students to download the video because we don't know students' bandwidth, and sometimes it's hard for them to stream videos. And we had a student this past semester that wasn't able to watch a lot of lectures because she didn't have internet access or she had slow internet access at her house. So she asked to be able to download all of her videos when she was at a spot where that had good Wi-Fi, and then she would watch them after the fact because streaming videos does take a lot of your bandwidth. So just be conscious of that when you're adding videos to your course, especially right now in the pandemic. So again, I'm going to recommend for you to be able to allow students to download it, and then just let them know that if you don't want it to be shared publicly, that after you watch it, please remove it from your computer and to not share it outside of class. So then you're going to hit this blue embed button. And by default, it's going to name that video studio. So I recommend for you to name the video appropriately. So I'm just going to call this again, test video. I'll call it 2, and then add that item. And so now when a student would click on that, it's going to load for them. And then it's also going to load comments if they wanted to. And then they have that ability to full screen it if they wanted to. And then lastly, that download option is going to appear for them to be able to download it for later viewing if they needed to for bandwidth issues. So that was a quick overview of Canvas Studio and what it has to offer. I do want to show you how to automatically close caption your videos. I know it was a lot of information to absorb, but this is very important. So pay attention. If you click on this video here, it's going to load, and then you have the ability to add captions by clicking Captions, and then choosing the primary language that is spoken. And in this video, it's English. I will say English is the only language that I know. I have not been able to test other languages to see how accurate it is, but I will say that it says up to 85% accuracy. I have found it to be more accurate depending upon the content and the audio quality that's coming in. Sometimes it is 95% accurate. Sometimes it messes up my name. That is a very consistent thing. Caudill never seems to be spelled correctly. Or if you have specific jargon of your discipline, sometimes it might not know those concepts. So once you generate those captions, you're going to get an email when it says, okay, my captions are ready to be reviewed and published. And you would just go back to this particular video, and it's going to show a little blue box that says review and publish. And when you click that box, it's going to show you all of the caption options that are available. It is not instantaneous. It may take some time depending upon how long your video is. So I always say once you click request captions, just navigate away and wait for that email for you to then go back and publish those captions. But you will have to hit that publish button before students can see that. And I'm just going to leave this running in the background so you can see what it's going to look like once it's time to actually publish those captions. Any
Yeah, I was going to
questions?
actually say, so it depends on the length of the video, I guess, right?
It does, but I
How
will
long it will publish, how long it will take to publish.
say it's usually within 24 hours. It most likely is not going to take 24 hours to do it. But it really depends
It takes
on,
that long, huh?
it might not. For this
Yeah.
particular video, this 19-second video, this will probably be done in a minute or two, but it
I see.
depends really upon the length of the video and how many videos you're requesting to caption, and then Canvas as a whole in our instance, how many videos it's going to take to caption. So I always recommend to give it at least 24 hours. Like I said, it should not take 24 hours, but just to give you a buffer before posting it for students to view.
And you gave the example of if you download a YouTube piece, you may not, I mean, you may not be able to do the
Correct.
caption. You usually can't, you can't do the closed caption. So,
Correct. And
okay.
one thing to look for when you are looking for YouTube videos is I always recommend to look to see if the video is already closed captioned for you. A lot of YouTube videos will already have closed captions, and if it has it, then students will be able to see those captions through Studio. But if the user or the owner of that video did not close caption it, then you're not going to be able to generate those captions for that video. Any other questions? So next up, we are going to quickly talk about what is video quizzing and why should you use it. So video quizzing is essentially exactly what it sounds like. It's a video that allows instructors to insert specific questions into an instructional video, which causes the video to pause, and before resuming, it's going to ask a student to answer a question or to skip a question to be able to continue. So why should we utilize video quizzing? Again, we have those nice pedagogical theories behind Mayer's cognitive theory of multimedia learning, but there is also a principle that is the spatial contiguity principle, which talks about if you have, let's say you have an instructor that is at the front of the room lecturing, and then they are looking at a worksheet. It is far away, and sometimes it's hard for a student to be able to comprehend and grasp that information. And if you put the answer and the content that's being delivered within a close proximity or close spatially, it's easier for them to be able to comprehend and be able to retain information. So that is another rationale behind why video can help students retain information better, but also when it comes to video quizzing, they can see it and then they are able to actually answer those questions instead of having to see information further away and then have to then process it and be able to look at something closer to them. So it's just spatially is going to help them. Again, assist with mastery. If they have a question that pops up and let's say they don't remember what you talked about, it gives you the ability to rewatch that section to then come back to that question. So it just, again, helps assist with mastery. We talked about Gagne. It's also going to help promote engagement and active viewing. If you know that I'm going to have questions that are going to pop up and I have to answer them either for a grade or just comprehension checks, I know I have to be actively viewing and listening. I can't just hit play and walk away. I know I have to be able to absorb that content. It also gives you the ability for scenario-based learning opportunities. You can introduce a concept and show a scenario of something that's happening and then pause it and say, here's the scenario. What would you do? What's the proper protocol of what to do for next steps? They could then answer the question and then see what the proper protocol would be. And then you can go back and reflect to see so many students chose this particular scenario and that wasn't necessarily right. Why did they think that this was the best protocol to take? Maybe I should talk about that in class since so many people chose the wrong scenario. And then lastly, it's going to help vary assessment type. When it comes to online learning or even just through Canvas, we don't always have to rely on quizzes or discussion boards. This is just another way to assess student learning, and it lets them showcase different abilities and think through some of the video content, things like that. It's just another way to present material, another way for them to be assessed. I will say that I'm a big fan of varying assessment types. So don't, after this class, don't say, I'm going to use video quizzing for every single assessment that I'm ever going to do. It's just a way to help vary. So vary those assessment types for your students. Again, I like to show best practices for concepts. So best practices for video quizzing, always chunk that content. We talked about the 5 to 7 minutes is ideal. Provide clear instructions and expectations for your students. That's actually a best practice for any assignment or assessment type, to let them know what the expectations are and then how to essentially actually take the video quiz if they're not used to video quiz. Canvas is a great resource. If you go to Canvas Guides, has great resources and documentation of how to complete certain tasks in Canvas. So it's just something that you can provide to students. And I always recommend to allow students to gain confidence with an assessment type. And what I mean by that is don't throw a final exam on them when the first time they've ever seen a video quiz. Do some small comprehension checks so they get familiar with the technology. They know what's expected of them. They know what to look for. So that way, when it comes to a bigger assessment, like a final exam or a midterm, they're used to that technology and you're not throwing something new at them when they're already nervous. with potentially the exam, and they're not as high strung and nervous to take that. Again, I talked about varying assessment type. Video quizzing is great, but please always vary your assessment type. It's important to close caption your videos. So any videos that you're going to assess students on, make sure closed captioning is on, especially for those that are hard of hearing. It's gonna essentially not be accessible to them to be able to hear and absorb all that content. So make sure that's always closed captioned and be on the lookout for those students. And then this is something mostly just based on the video quizzing platform. In order for a student to submit a video quiz, they have to view the entire video before hitting that submit button. And a lot of students do not know that, which is, again, put those in those instructions, provide clear instructions to say you have to watch the video to the entirety to submit it. A lot of students will take the video quiz and then they say, okay, I hit my 3 questions, I'm just going to close out, and all that information is lost. So they have to hit submit quiz. And one thing that I do to help students remember that is I put a question at the very, very end of my video. So as soon as they click that answer, then the submit quiz button is going to pop up. Sometimes if you don't necessarily have a question to put there, I put the pledge of just saying on my honor, I've not received, or I can't remember the exact rationale, but I haven't received assistance on this assignment, true or false. And so that way they can just hit true and then it goes to submit quiz. And then they also had signed the honor pledge as well. So again, I love my creation time. Kathleen, I'm assuming you were going to just watch and not follow along here. So I'm going to jump right in. So just like we did when we created our video, we're going to go back to Studio. And I do want to emphasize that in order to add a quiz to a Canvas Studio video, it has to be within your library. Canvas Studio allows you to share videos with others. And so in order to create that video, you have to have it within your library and be the owner of that content, unless it is coming in from YouTube. With YouTube, you can add video quizzes over top of it if you wanted to, but it has to be within your library itself. So I'm going to take this YouTube video that I had brought in, and I'm going to hit these 3 vertical dots, and then you can see create quiz. Create quiz is going to populate for you. And then here is where we add our video quizzes. So I'm going to say this is going to be my Moana quiz. And I'm going to say, please watch the following video and answer the questions. This option here, by default, it's going to populate on your timeline whenever there's a question. It's going to show a little icon right above that marker of where the questions are going to populate for students. So students technically, if they see the question markers, they have the ability to click that question marker and jump right to that question. If you are somebody that you said, I want those questions to be hidden, almost like a pop quiz, I don't want them to be able to jump to the questions and answer the video and finish it. I want it to watch the entirety. Go ahead and hide those question markers, and then a student will just be watching the video and not necessarily know when a question is going to pop up for them. So that's what that option is. I am going to go ahead and say I'm going to show you the question markers so that way you can see what that looks like. And then I'm going to go ahead and get started. Now you can see I have a little plus button that has generated here, and you're going to get a little plus button no matter where you click in that video. And let me turn this audio off. I don't know if you guys are Moana fans, but if you had not seen it, it's a cute little Disney movie. I highly recommend. My son, he is 16 months, and this is his favorite song from that movie. And so that's why I chose that. So wherever you decide you want to put your question, I'm going to navigate to right around here, and I'm going to click this plus button. And it's going to ask me, what question type do you want? Right now, these are the only 3 options. Multiple choice, exactly what it sounds like. True, false, exactly what it sounds like. And then multiple answer, if you decided to have multiple choices, that multiple choices could be correct, you could have multiple answers, and that's what that is. So I'm going to go ahead and say multiple choice. And I'm going to say, what is this movie? And then I'm going to populate my answers. just like, well, actually I'm going to do Moana, and I can just click this little answer button for me to be able to get more options. So once I've populated all my answers, I have to select what the correct answer is. And if I select a little circle outside, then you can see that now it's a colored circle, and that is what you're signifying to Canvas that this is the correct answer. You can also see that we have some options down here. You have the ability to vary points by answer. So let's say that one of the questions was, if you have a patient that is overweight, how does it affect their likelihood of diagnosing diabetes? And you can say it's much more likely, it's more likely, it's not likely at all. And let's say that you decided that they get 2 points for much more likely because that's the correct answer. But if they selected more likely, it's kind of right, but not 100%. So you still want to give them partial credit. You want to give them a point for that answer. Whereas the other ones, they would get 0 points because it wouldn't necessarily apply to those options. So it gives you the ability to be able to vary points by answer if you want to kind of give that partial credit to them. Shuffling choices, if you don't want a student to say, hey, Bill, the answers to the questions are A, C, and D. You can shuffle those choices so that way everybody has a different order in what their answers are. And then lastly, we have feedback. So if you wanted to give a student feedback for when they got an answer correct or incorrect, you can do that, or you can provide general feedback regardless of what they answered. So just some more ways for them to be able to get feedback from you as the instructor. And then once we are finally ready, we're going to hit this save button. Oops, let me do. So now I'm going to hit save, and now you can see that I have a little pencil icon that populates. This is going to populate, so if you wanted to go back and edit that question really fast, you can do that. And then I'm going to go ahead and click through here, and you can continue and add the different questions that you want to. True, false is going to look exactly the same. You would just select what you wanted the answer to be. And then multiple answer is where you are going to check all that apply to that particular question, so that way students know what the correct answer is. And then once you are completely done with your quiz, you're going to hit this done button, and then it's going to generate that quiz for you. And you can now see that I have a little spaceship that's going to appear at the top of that video, and that means that there is a quiz behind that. And so that way you know which videos necessarily have video quizzes attached to it. You can add multiple video quizzes to the same video. You can't necessarily duplicate a quiz. You would have to add a new quiz, and you could call this the Moana #2 quiz if you wanted to. You can add the same quiz to multiple classes if you wanted to. You don't necessarily have to create multiple quizzes for different classes. So now the question is, once I have this video quiz, how do I get it to my students? And I'm being conscious of time, so I'm going to quickly go over this. If you go to your particular class that you want to add it, there are 2 ways that you can add it. One being hitting this plus button here, going down to external tool, just like we did when we wanted to add a studio video that we created. We're going to click studio, and it's going to populate. Here we go. And then I'm going to know which ones have quizzes attached because I have that little rocket ship that's going to appear. So I'm going to select this one. And then now you can see I have that standard embed option, but now I get a video quiz embed option. That then I select that and just say, I want the Moana quiz in here. And I'm going to embed it. And then I'm going to rename it to say Moana quiz. And I'm going to add that item. And now when students click, they are going to be able to see that video quiz. Now you can see here that a student is going to be able to get started, and then you can see that I have that little question mark here. And that's what that question marker means. So as a student, I can quickly jump to that and then be able to take that quiz. And you can see I have that ability to re-watch if I needed to, because I missed all that content. It jumps me back to the start point, and then I have the ability to go ahead and go there. Now I will say that if you do this option, I'm going to show you what it looks like on the instructor side. You can still get results of your students. Oh, I guess I didn't show you. You can still get results of your students by going, let me go to this one. By going to that particular quiz and going to results, and you can see an item analysis of how your students were scored on each particular question, but you can also see specific student results and what they scored, how long it took them to, when they submitted it, and then I can even get more granular and say, her attempt 1, here were her exact answers that populated here. And you can get that type of analysis either from doing the first way, embedding, just by going to external tool. Now, if you want to add it to your grade book to make sure that it is populating automatically in the grade book, you're going to want to add it through assignments. And you do that by going to assignments, adding an assignment, populating the title and the description like normal, setting the point values to be the same point values as your quiz, only because it's going to get a little funky if you have different point values for your quiz and for your actual assignment here. So make sure those match. And then you're going to go to submission type. And instead of doing online, which is what a lot of people usually do, you're going to go to external tool. And then you're going to click that find button here. And just like we did for the other way to integrate it, you're going to click Studio. And my web browser is not being friendly. And then I'm going to select and video quiz embed, just like we've done before. And then I'm going to select it here, and then I'm going to save and publish it for students. And what that's going to do is it's going to bring it into SpeedGrader. So that way you don't have to go back and forth to say, well, Sally scored this score on it, and now I'm going to import it into SpeedGrader. This is automatically going to populate whatever this particular student got on that to SpeedGrader, so that way you don't have to kind of go double back and forth. It allows you to automatically import it into your gradebook. So again, if you wanted it to import into gradebook, you're going to have to create an assignment, go through external tool. But if it's more of a comprehension check that you just want to check in on your students to see where they are in a particular concept, then you're going to want to just go through an external link. And really quickly, again, to be able to see those results, you're going to click on that video and then be able to look at those quiz results. And this is going to give you detailed information as a class as a whole, or you can see specific student results. And on the student side, they get to see automatically what they've scored once they submitted that quiz. I will say these analytics may not be instantaneous, the item analysis. Sometimes it can take a couple minutes to go ahead and update all those results. Usually it's pretty quick, but I just wanted to emphasize that item analysis might not be available immediately as students are taking it. So as I presented all this information to you, a couple things to remember. If you don't remember anything, these are the most important. Always closed caption your videos, whether it is through video assessments or video quizzing or just important information in instructional videos. Chunk those videos. 5 to 7 minutes is ideal for students to be able to keep engagement in those videos. One thing I forgot to mention, which is very important, once a question is created for a video quiz, you cannot move or adjust where it appears on the timeline. So if you remember where I clicked that plus button to add that quiz question, I can edit that question, but I can't necessarily move it 5 seconds forward or 5 seconds backward. Wherever I add that question is there. Once a quiz is embedded into a course, it will not be able to be edited. So this is very important. You can go and edit that quiz while you're creating it, but the moment you embed it into your Canvas course site, you cannot edit that quiz. So very, very important. Make sure that quiz is exactly what you wanted to do before embedding it. Again, analytics may not be instantaneous, so just give it some time to load and be able to calculate all that information for you. Add your video quiz as an external tool within assignments for it to appear in gradebook, and make sure those point values match. You don't have the assignment to say it's only out of 2, but then you have 10 questions within your video quiz, because it's going to cause some issues there. So just make sure that you have matching point values. And then remember that students must watch the video to its entirety before they can submit that quiz and before it grades for them. So again, make sure you let students know that, especially if they're new to video quizzes, so that way they know how to submit that quiz. And I know we are a little over time. We started a little late, my apologies. But if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. My name is Ashley Caudill. I'm an instructional designer at the School of Education and Human Development, and that is my email address. So as always, feel free to reach out to me. I will be sending you the PowerPoint slides and the recording and some additional documentation that you can use or share with your students to help them. But I hope you learned something. I'm sorry we went over a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and stop recording.